Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. We're looking today at Jeremiah chapter 9, verse 2. That would be verse 3 in our English versions. In verse 1, we saw that Jeremiah was expressing his grief and his frustration actually with his people, calling them just a band of traitors and treacherous and adulterers. And that thought is going to continue, although we're going to see a little surprise about who exactly is speaking by the time we get to the end of this verse. It sounds like Jeremiah is continuing, and it might not end up that way. Let's read the verse in Hebrew, a little bit tricky as we get started here today. Vayadrechu et leshonam kashtam sheker velo le'emunah gavru va'aretz ki me'ra'a el ra'a yatsa'u ve'oti lo yada'u ne'um Adonai. Well, we start with this word here, and you may recognize the three-letter root, darak, which a very common word, derek, which we know as a road or a path. And what we have here with this pathak underneath, this is going to be an yod at the beginning. We have a vav consecutive, that's pretty obvious, a yod at the beginning and an u as a sufformative. So we're going to have an imperfect consecutive, and it's going to be a 3MP and a hifil. And that's mainly because of this yod that we have right here. A couple manuscripts actually have a hirik here, then it would be a kal. And we're going to see there's not a lot of difference in the meaning of this word, whether it's a kal or a hifil. So darak usually means, obviously with the idea of a road or something like that, it means to walk or to tread. To march perhaps, so to tread. But it's often used in another sense that we'll see in just a second here. So they have tread. What do they tread? Well, their tongue, lashon, there's your 3MP suffix there, and you probably know this is not a lamet that's attached to the beginning of a word. This is part of the word, lashon, which means tongue. So they have done something with their tongue, and then kashtam. Now, this tam is not the suffix, it's just the over here. And the word we have here is usually keshet, which would usually be with two segols underneath. It's a segolet noun. And this means a bow, for instance, like a bow and arrow. So this would be the bow that one would use. Now, treading, when you have the idea of a bow, has the idea of putting your foot on the bow and preparing it. You're getting the bow ready to be strung and ready to be shot. So what they've done, they have tread their tongue, or they have tread their tongue, their bow. And most of the translations will understand this as they have prepared to shoot their tongues like a bow. And then we have this word sheker. So this is a word which means falsehood, or it's a word that we've seen pretty frequently here in Jeremiah for falsehood. So they have tread their tongues, prepared their tongues to shoot their bow, falsehood. Now we're going to see, what do we do with this? Are they shooting falsehood, or is there some other way to understand this? Well, we'll come back to that. And not, there's a negation for Lamed with amunah. Now, amunah is a word which has a wide range of meanings, actually. It can mean truth, especially when it's in opposition to sheker, which is falsehood over here. But it has to do not so much with intellectual or propositional truth as much as it does truth that's also lived out. So frequently it's translated as faithfulness, fidelity. It can be translated as faith, pistis, in the Greek Septuagint many times, honesty. So truth, this is falsehood, and not for, let's call it truth, although, again, there's some other nuances that could go along with it. Now, gavru, this is a perfect. You just have an u sufformative at the end, so this is a perfect third common plural. It's a kal from our root gavar. You remember gabur is just a vigorous young man. So gabar is this verbal idea meaning to prevail, to be superior, to be strong and superior. So not for truth or faithfulness, they have prevailed in the land. So we see this both with our full article, in the land. And then because, or for, from, is our min, right there, and the nun rejects, and so we get this lengthening of the Hirek into a full sereh. So from evil and to evil. We can see what's coming here. So from evil to evil, they have gone. They have gone forth. So this is just a perfect third common plural again, a kal from yatsa, a regular verb here. They have gone. But, and I'm going to translate this as a but because this is obviously a direct object marker with a first common singular suffix, me. And when you find it front-loaded like this at the beginning of a phrase, it's very much in opposition. But me, they have not known. This is a perfect, again, just like what we had over here, third common plural, kal from our verb yada. But me, they have not known, perhaps in the sense of understood or in the sense of acknowledged in a deeper way. There's a strong sense of knowing what this means, knowing who this person is. Me, they have not known, says an oracle of Yahweh, says the Lord. So this is the surprise right here. It sort of sounds like Jeremiah is continuing to speak as the verse begins because he's just called them adulterers in verse 1. But now we realize that it's Yahweh himself who is speaking as he goes through this. They've gone from evil to evil. Now, there's some translation issues that we have to deal with here. So let's hide our work and let's go up and we'll look at three very different translations today, and we see what we do with them. First, the NIV. They make ready their tongue. They tread their tongue like a bow. So literally, we just have these two sort of accusatives in here, but they're being compared, even though we don't have the word like, but that's a good way of doing it. A Hebrew can do that. Now, they tread their tongue, their bow, lies or falsehood. So now the Masoretic text actually has accents here that would seem to indicate that sheker belongs with this part of the verse. We're going to see, however, that the Septuagint translates it a little bit differently. But let's finish this one. They make ready their tongue like a bow, lies, to shoot lies. That's the idea implied here. So there's a little bit of adding some words here, but almost necessary if you want to understand it this way. It is not by truth, not for truth or with respect to truth, that they triumph in the land. So this is taking the they as the same they that tread their bows and make, in other words, the people of the land. It's not by truth that they triumph in the land. They go from one sin to another. This is the they and the they over here. They do not acknowledge me, declares the Lord. Let's look at a different translation, this time the ESV, which is pretty typical. They bend their tongue like a bow. Falsehood and not truth has grown strong in the land. Well, whoa, what have they done here? Well, they've sort of made a break here and put sheker over here with velo la amunah. So they've combined these two, falsehood and not truth. That is what has grown strong, not the they of the people, but the falsehood has grown strong and not truth has grown strong in the land. That's a possible way of doing it. And the Septuagint, this is very much the way the Septuagint has understood the Hebrew text. For they proceed from evil to evil, they do not know me, declares the Lord. Acknowledge, I think, is almost a better way, although it's the strong sense of know. And here's another one, and this is the New American Bible, the Catholic edition, Revised edition, not the New American Standard. They ready their tongues like a drawn bow. So they've sort of made the same break here, despite the accents in the Masoretic text, with lying and not with truth. So they've taken lying and not truth, not with truth, with respect to truth. They are powerful in the land. So the subject of they are powerful is once again the people, whereas in the ESV, it's the falsehood and the not truth that has grown strong. It has become the subject of this verb. Here we've gone back to the people themselves. With lying and not with truth, they are powerful in the land, and then they go from evil to evil. Me, they do not know, oracle of the Lord. Now, I have to admit, it's sort of difficult to choose between these three different approaches, and you'll see a few other variations if you look at other translations as well. The main idea here, however, is very, very clear. whether we take the sheker, the falsehood, up with this part or over with this part. It's the idea that lies have been going forth from the people, and this is what we've seen all through chapter 8 and the accusations that God is bringing. And it's not faithfulness and truth and honesty that's going forth. And the people who are prevailing are people who are not promoting God's way. So the overall meaning is very, very clear, even though the exact reference and how to translate this little phrase in here can give us a little bit of variation. So, well, I hope that's an interesting perspective to see how we can look at a little difficult problem here, a little bit different with the Septuagint as well. In any case, though, we see a people that's turning far, far away from God and refusing to acknowledge Him. That is the bottom line problem. Not knowing God, not acknowledging God, not being in that relationship and seeking to please Him will always lead to this kind of deviation and destruction. We'll check back with us soon as we continue working in Jeremiah 9 in the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.